I mean,
everybody wants yes and no.
and the way things are running. Internally, sometimes changes are required. So it's just not.
Listen, I have to tell you. The best.
All right, folks, we are live on YouTube. So we're gonna go ahead and get started. Welcome, everybody, and for those watching at home, welcome. This is a regularly scheduled city council workshop. As you might have noticed, if you're watching from home, our table is a lot bigger. We have a lot more folks here. We're delighted to have with us Bangor's legislative delegation, as well as members of the legislative delegation and city council from our sister city across the river, Brewer. So I would like to begin by giving everyone a chance to quickly introduce yourselves for those who are watching online and who may not have the benefit of being able to see the name tags around the table. So I'm Council Chair Kara Pelletier.
Dina Yaqub Aga, Bangor City Council.
Joseph Leonard, City Councilor, Bangor.
Subhan Pantai, City Councilor, City Brewer.
Jen Moran, Mayor Brewer.
Dan Trumbull, Bangor City Councilor.
Michelle LeBrie Daniels, City Council Brewer.
Rick Fournier, Bangor City Council.
Joe Perry, State Rep, Bangor.
Peter Lightfoot, Senator.
I'm Breen Rana, Representative for House District 21 in Bangor.
Yeah, Laura Supika, Representative for District 22 in Bangor. Amy Rader, Representative for District 23, Bangor.
Joe Baldacci, District 9, which is the city of Bangor and the town of Hamilton.
Susan Dean, Bangor City Councilor.
Gretchen Schaefer, Bangor City Councilor. Carolyn Fish, Bangor City Councilor.
Sue Hawes, Bangor City Councilor.
Wonderful, thank you. So tonight on the agenda, what we were hoping to start with was a quick discussion of some of the city council priorities for Bangor for the upcoming year. We'd also like to hear from our legislative delegation. We have a number of bills. Y'all are very busy. Listed out.
Here, I think State Representative Kevin O'Connell's here.
Oh.
Yeah, you can't just hide in the
Yeah,
corner.
I think we need to make room at the table.
There's a chair there.
He tries to be very honest.
Yeah. Some
District
rude
20,
person
I've
moved
had,
the chair
I have
if they
all
wanted
the
more
brewer. That wasn't for Mr. Perry.
That's right.
Thank you very much.
Sure, thank you, welcome, thanks for being here. And thank you to all of you for being here. We know the legislature is already back in session. We know, again, your schedules are very busy. To our friends from Brewer, we appreciate you taking the time to come over to our side of the river and share your thoughts with us. Most of the things that we work on as city council don't just impact Bangor, they impact our region, and we're well aware of that. And so the places where we can work together to find solutions that work for everyone in the Bangor region, I think we're better off doing that. So tonight is really about hearing from all your perspectives. It's about sharing ideas and thoughts, pushing back on things that may or may not make sense, and hopefully all of us walking away with a better understanding of how we can work together over the next few months during legislative session and beyond, to do our very best for the folks who we are representing for our neighbors. So with that, I'd like to start by talking a little bit about city council priorities. So our council has declared 2024 as the year of housing for Bangor, and we're looking at ways to incentivize development of certainly affordable housing, but not just affordable housing, housing at every price point for every kind of family and person who wants to live in the city of Bangor, because we know from the state housing study that we just don't have enough housing overall. So one of the things that we have already done is signed on with the same organization that did the Maine state housing study to develop a housing production plan for the city of Bangor that we're hoping to have this summer that will give us a better idea of what do we have in our inventory, what do we need, and help us understand what the gaps are and how to work with that. We've also, as a city, have a couple $1 million and change left from our ARPA funds that we will be looking at ways to prioritize the use of those funds for housing related initiatives. Emergency shelters and supporting our unhoused residents is something that's also at the top of our mind. We know that there's a bill proposed to expand funding for low barrier shelters. I hope we can talk about that this evening. General assistance is something that has been a challenge for the city of Bangor to administer, as we often get what I would say more than our share of folks who come to Bangor looking for general assistance because they've been told by their municipality that general assistance is not available. And so we want to make sure that everybody in the state of Maine who's eligible for general assistance has access to it. And so we're open to ways to working together to streamline that process and make it easier for people to get the help that they are eligible for. We also, in terms of homelessness, some of the things that we continue to talk about are the challenges that the Bangor area faces. Bangor in particular is being sort of a service center community for the upper half of the state, and how we often have people who come to Bangor looking for services that they simply can't get in their municipality elsewhere. And we're also curious as to what may be happening with the Dorothea Dix facility. Is there an opportunity to use that state asset at some level as a place that we could build housing, supportive housing, transitional housing, or expand services to people who need them? So I'm going to pause here because there's 20 of you and ask, first of all, from my fellow counselors in Bangor, what did I miss or get wrong? And then also I'd like to hear from the Councilman Brewer a little bit about your priorities for the upcoming year.
No pressure.
Nothing wrong, see?
Yeah, very good. Yes, Councilor House.
Nothing wrong, but I just wanted to mention that part of the priorities with the development of the housing, we had also talked about the infrastructure of new development, new roads, new sewer, new water, all of that. So just so we don't lose that when we're talking about the development of housing, that should also be included.
Thank you. What else?
Can I ask on that one too?
Yes,
So is that project a go on North French Street up in that area? Is that a complete go or is that on hold?
the Lancaster Avenue project.
Yes,
So the one, I believe it's.
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
go.
it is a go. Okay, I wasn't sure the final. If it was a go, okay.
Councilor
Mm-hmm.
Leonard, I saw your hand.
I was motioning to Counselor Dean.
Thank you. Councilor Dean.
I'm just wondering if we could get a list from the city of available properties, vacancies that we might be able to utilize for some of this housing, because it seems like they just come up piecemeal. We don't really know where they are. Is that something that maybe city management could do for us?
Yes, and in fact, sorry, Courtney O'Donnell, Assistant City Manager. City Manager Debbie Laurie is on vacation. Yes, and I believe actually recently, funding was approved for housing studies specifically for Bangor as well to give us a better idea of, our housing stock as a whole. But certainly, we've gotten that question more than once, and I'll work with Debbie Laurie upon her return for that.
Okay, thank you.
Cameron.
I guess what I'll say is, as far as Brewer and the things that we're working on, we have a variety of different initiatives. We too just received a list of all of the vacant property that we have.
And/or city-owned property.
City-owned property, I should say.
We're gonna try to tap.
Yep, and we, our ultimate goal is to identify if there's any sorts of opportunities for us to bring folks to the area. If we can identify if we have any things that are, I guess what I want to say is potentially maybe could be some challenges with code and how we might be able to move forward. We're looking to increase constituency communication. So in just a couple of weeks, we will be having what we would refer to as similar to a town crier. So if there is, an event like the storm that we just had, that what will happen is you can, as a constituent, sign up to receive communication so that you know what's happening in the community. If there's any road closures, anything along the lines of that. And so the theme for Brewer is really increasing communication in the community. And I'll also say is that we absolutely have an eye on what's happening in Augusta. And, you know, specifically, I guess last week, we had an opportunity to, voice our community thoughts on LD 1975. So looking forward to hearing more of what's in store.
Thank
Can
you.
I echo a couple things on what Jen said? You mentioned the storm. One of the things I do when I'm out in my bucket truck is I'm looking at the Orrington page and the City of Brewer page. And I'm learning because people are talking on there. It's like, I got a tree down here, I got a wire down here. So we have the communication going pretty well.
But that's private. Like the city of, that's not the Brewer page.
Yeah.
Is actually one that I started, so.
Yeah.
Before I was a counselor, so it does, but hopefully we're gonna get that geared towards the city instead of the private. Like, yeah, we still need that communication, but we really need it coming from the city, and we've been working as a whole, as a group, that's our focus, you know, is to make communication the top. Jen was very right about the housing, and trying to figure it out, and I said this to someone earlier, a lot of Brewer is wetland, and we're running into a problem where there's a lot of land, but you can't use it. So we're kind of, how are we thinking outside the box? You know, there's nothing we can do about it, so how do we as a council try to help with that? So that's one of the things that we're gonna have to be in discussion about, to how do we, because we can't change zoning, it's an EPA thing, so.
Did I see something positive in the paper? Because Joe said I don't read the paper. Did I see something positive in the paper about that, the place up on Lambert Road? They're activating that again for housing. Up on Lambert Road on the left before you get to the,
Oh,
Yes,
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 yeah,
that,
the 20
yes, that
unit.
has passed.
oh,
Yeah.
good,
Yes.
excellent.
Yeah, it's a 20 unit, how many, 4 buildings?
4 buildings.
20 unit, 4
Yep.
buildings,
Okay,
yeah.
excellent.
That's good news. And I just saw they're looking to redevelop a property in Orono to add 30 more apartments. So everything in the region helps. Fantastic.
Madam Chair, can I ask a
Yes.
question? So we passed a important zoning bill, land use bill, like almost 2 years ago. What is the feedback from our, why don't you be helpful for you guys to give us some feedback on that bill? I mean, I think many of us felt it was important for this community, but.
And can I
Yeah,
tack onto that? Absolutely, because that was one of my questions. You know, we're talking about marshland and you can't rezone, but what about high density zoning and building upwards instead of outwards into into marshlands? So I was curious. So thank you for bringing that up.
No,
Yeah. We're
something
just starting this process, so like we just got the list of city-owned properties, which a lot of them include wetlands, so.
And we have discussed building upward.
Yeah, so we're just like, this is a beginning, process.
Counselor Tremble?
Yeah, I thank you for that question.
Sure.
Because I think it's important, like, and I think the last part of what you said was key, that it was good for this community. And I think it was, and we were already heading in that direction. But to think that the state legislature should be passing a zoning law that affects the entire state and telling Bangor what we should do for zoning and Kittery and Fort Kent is crazy. So I don't think it was appreciated by this council. Maybe other councils did, but this council didn't appreciate it. But we were already heading in that direction anyway, but thank you for pushing us.
No, it had to be done.
Yeah.
Representative Super.
Well, I was gonna say the term crazy was kind of a surprising thing to hear you say.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, maybe we.
So it's
Let's put- yeah,
more
like,
constructive
yeah,
for me,
yeah.
come on.
Yeah.
That bill, I understand your concerns, Counselor, but we had to really reshift where the state had been, because before the bill, I mean, we were talking about sprawl, we were talking about really not focused on urban centers. Bangor, Portland, Lewiston, every service center in this state would benefit from the bill. There have been exemptions and delays built into the bill for many communities. But for Bangor, I think it's been a plus in terms of the type of direction we're going in.
It's also been studied and shown statistically, like, it's been proven that a municipality can do a lot with zoning to include, increase their housing stock. There's a lot through zoning. There's also a lot through reducing your parking minimums, which I believe Bangor still has. There's a lot of things that you can do to help development happen, and I have questions about that if we have time for that today, so.
And I would like to point out that one of the studies that showed that urban density and building that core was from the Bangor City Council in 2019.
Yeah, that was significant. There was significant.
No, I'm
support
agreeing.
on-
We're going.
Right,
I
that's,
just think that.
that's
it's
my
a-
district is
it
Bangor.
Should be a
so-
statewide.
Senator Lightfoot, were you trying to jump in?
No,
Oh, okay, all right.
I have to move around.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I don't mean to, but I prepared this document that I sent to the city manager. I do think it's important that the city council and Bangor understand what we've been working on, so I didn't make enough copies for everybody, but it would be helpful for everybody to hear that since 2021, the revenue sharing that Bangor has gotten has gone from 4.4 million to 9.95 million, which is an increase of 125%. And aid to education for Bangor has gone up 30% since FY 21. Plus, this community got 400,000 in 2021 to general assistance, and an extra 75,000 last year. So these are numbers, when I served on the council, we were being cut every year. We went through an 8-year administration that literally kept education funding flat. And I think it's been fortunate for Bangor's taxpayers. And I think it's important to recognize these two issues are some of the most important we deal with. And they were not just budgets passed unanimously, they were budgets that weren't passed unanimously, but were passed by a majority in order to make sure that this community got the money it deserves. And I think that's when I served on the council and as a senator, the most important thing we can do is work as a partner to make sure the revenue sharing and aid to education are strong. We're going to be dealing with the General Assistance Bill and Health and Human Services Committee. And hopefully, I think that LD 1732 is going to be the vehicle that's going to be used for a final bill. And hopefully Bangor can speak up on that, because the most important thing we can do is increase the reimbursement rate. So I just want to hit on those issues. So I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Yeah, that's kind of next on the agenda, so this is a great segue. I would love to talk about that bill in particular, what it's, you can share with everyone a bit about what it is proposing, and then if perhaps the council can vote tonight on whether or not to submit testimony for it.
Okay.
I have the bill summary.
1732. 1732. I think it's, yeah, 1732. It's one, the bill is sponsored by the co-chair of the committee, Representative Michelle Meyer. And it basically would increase the reimbursement from 70 to 90. It would require training of general assistance people. The Department of Human Services, we've had a conversation about, because we would like to have a statewide, I would like to have statewide administration, so it's uniform. But there will be a uniform application and it will be available to people online. So they don't have to come necessarily to the communities directly. Okay, but there will be more training for GA people supposedly. But the most important thing we can do, to be honest with you, is to increase the reimbursement rate so that you can shoulder those costs better. And that's hopefully going to be the focus of the bill.
Is that an ongoing funding
That's the bill.
request?
That's an ongoing, the bill is still in committee.
Oh, but if it hits the table, it would be an ongoing funding.
Yeah, and there is a bill to increase it that's on the appropriations table that was passed by both chambers, but it's not been funded. So we've tried to put the issue front and center. I think the pressure that Bangor and Brewer could bring to the governor's office, because that's really where this is being bottlenecked. We have talked to the department. The department really doesn't want to spend more money. But you guys, I would encourage you folks to directly contact and deal with the governor's office. They need to be pushed and pressured to do something constructive on this bill.
Thank you. Can we pause here for a moment for
Yeah.
questions and comments from council? Either council?
I would just say on that particular one, we've already on board with that, so I don't think it's gonna be an issue.
Perhaps.
No, I know, but I think if they
But we'll take
hear
a
from
phone
you,
call, yeah.
if they hear from you directly, that's all.
One thing I just want to say, in general, for this bill, for the other bills that the city cares about, it is imperative to have your voices in Augusta, because there are quite a lot of people and quite a lot of positions of power that think that Maine doesn't exist north of Augusta. The more we show up, the more we raise our voices, the more they're going to remember Bangor when we're talking about these laws. We see things that would help Bangor get healed off in negotiations, no matter how hard we try. Ember, sorry.
For our representatives, would you like to bring forward bills of particular importance to you?
Sure. Do you want to start with that? Sure.
Yeah, I think the most important bill for me in terms of Bangor as a community is LD 2138 from Representative Colleen Madigan, whose birthday it is today, by the way. And she has a bill that would ostensibly help Hope House. It is for the emergency shelter. The summary of the bill is it's a resolve that directs the Department of Health and Human Services to increase its overnight bed rate of reimbursement for low barrier shelters to $90 per night. It also directs the Department of Health and Human Services to pursue a waiver from the United States Department of Health and Human Services, Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services to access Medicaid funds to serve unhoused persons with substance use disorder or mental health disorders, or who are elderly persons with medical needs or persons with disabilities with medical needs. One of the reasons I spoke at length with Representative Madigan, and one of the reasons that she put it in was because if Hope House closes, it will start a cascade downstate, and all of the rest of the emergency shelters will be overwhelmed. Another thing I want to say in a room full of people, because I heard it directly from the Housing Committee, is that the Housing Committee believes that the way forward is to have a lot of housing, which is great, and to make sure everybody has a roof over their heads. The way forward for them does not include building additional shelters. We are in need. I said flat out, I said, if we don't have shelters north of Bangor, that's why we get overwhelmed. So consider expanding the shelter network while continuing with their plans. But if we care about shelter funding, if we want to keep our shelters open and funded through the state, please show up. Please say something. Written testimony is fine too, but without those shelters in various places north of us, we're going to continue to be that place where our shelters are overwhelmed.
I just was gonna add, one of the talking points we hear too is if we build enough housing, we won't need shelters. The issue is shelters are always meant to be a pass through, and right now we're finding a blockage at the shelter because there's no further housing. So it's the system is crumbling. So we can't get rid of shelters altogether. We need to build more housing. We're working on that. But we can't just let shelters close because, so.
And I will say that this bill in particular, she had to fight for in legislative council. It was initially rejected for this session. She fought for it, it got through, but it's the fact that it was in question as being necessary or an emergency bill is alarming to me.
Representative Rader, I'm sorry, did you say that was LD
2132, it has a public hearing tomorrow at 1.
2138.
2138, sorry.
Oh, it's okay.
Sorry. There is also 2136, which is another shelter funding bill from Anne Marie Mastracchio, Representative Mastracchio.
Can I ask really quick? I know that there's a backup like shelter vouchers, so vouchers aren't accepted by very many. So when you get to the point of being able to get a voucher, there's no place for you to actually use it.
Talk about
Okay.
a little bit more.
Yeah.
I'll talk a little bit about 2138 and then I'll go into something that touches on the vouchers. Is that good? Okay, so thank you so much, Representative Rader, for bringing up 2138. So again, 1 p.m. tomorrow in the Housing Committee is when that bill will be seen. And to clarify, the hope is for there to be funding for 7 of the low barrier. I'm looking at Lori Dwyer, 5. There are 5 low barrier shelters, and these are the folks in our communities that need the most support in order to stay sheltered while being homeless. And I just wanted to add that this is a huge need in our community. As we know, we have a huge amount of people in encampments. We're trying to get as many of them into sheltered homeless. They're still going to be homeless, but they'll be sheltered, and the pathway alongside this is also to make sure that we have support from the municipalities and making sure they're looking into creating transitional housing so that folks from those low barrier shelters are able to enter into homes. So Representative Rader talked a little bit about how the aspect of an emergency shelter is always going to be something that we need to support. And alongside that, we need to make sure that I'm hoping that we can have a conversation about, as the city council is seeing this as the year of housing, that we're having a conversation about creative ways that we can get people sustainable housing, especially with 24/7 support, and using the housing first model. And with that said, I also just wanted to bring up, related to both of these bills that were brought up, LD 1710. Right now, it's still under that general assistance piece, but actually this bill has been altered a bit and doesn't have as much of that general assistance aspect anymore. But it will relieve the general assistance system, because right now, as you all know, it's being used as this kind of like catch-all emergency system. And LD 1710 will provide vouchers for people to be able to access housing or stay in their homes if they're not able to pay their rent. And to answer your question, Counselor, is it Liberty Daniels or just Daniels? Just Daniels, Counselor Daniels. Our hope is that in this bill, the way that the vouchers are given is that the time allotment for how long you can use your voucher is expanded, so people will have more time. They won't run out of time. So often we see people lose their vouchers because there's a limit on how long you can look, and also it'll expand the area in which people can look for housing using those vouchers.
So like shelter vouchers themselves, a lot of the landlords are not accepting them at all. So it's like in this area, it's very limited if you get a shelter voucher. So how does that apply? You can't use them because there is no place for them to use them.
Definitely.
So
there is talk legislatively to, I have two answers for you.
Right.
There is talk, and I'd love to hear if people are supportive of this. It's something that I support. Source of income anti-discrimination, where if a landlord wants to participate in a program, that they cannot discriminate against someone based off if they're using a voucher or not. So regardless of where that, how that rent is being paid. So I'd love to hear feedback on how people feel about that. 'Cause
Yeah,
I think-
no, I
yeah.
think part of the issue, so on general assistance, I think that the administration wants to take housing out of the general assistance, which is not a bad idea. However, it's gotta be replaced by something, okay? And they haven't gotten to that point yet. So I agree. I think part of the issue that we heard in terms of the housing issue from general assistance is that landlords had to get it renewed every 30 days. And they weren't gonna take, they weren't gonna take something that was only, that they had to have renewed every 30 days. And so we had talked about trying to extend it so the landlords would have like 6 months. So they wouldn't have to, because that is part of the major problem is the landlords are seeing 30 days and then have to come back and do this all the time. So we are really at an impasse right now because, to be honest with you, because the administration wants to take housing out of general assistance, but it's gonna have to find a place, it's gonna have to find something that's equal to or better than what we're offering now.
Definitely.
And they haven't come up with that. Again, we would just encourage your voices to the administration. I think the legislature as a whole will vote for and has voted for stuff that has helped this area, but it gets bottlenecked because the administration has its own ideas, okay, and doesn't want to move in a certain way. So in terms of the general assistance and that issue, I really encourage you to put pressure directly on on the administration, because we had a discussion with the DHHS commissioner. And she's not clear about what she wants, what is gonna be the replacement, and that's the problem. We need to have emergency rental assistance in some fashion.
Yeah, and that's what LD 17
Yeah.
would, 1710 would do, because it is separate from the GA system. It
Yeah.
is housing vouchers through main housing, and we're hoping to fund that. So that's one option, is the anti-discrimination, which I'm happy to talk more about, because I think it raises red flags for people, and I wanna settle those concerns. The second thing that's possible is through partnership with municipalities, and our CAP agencies and the organizations that we see around this in the audience often, building those relationships with landlords so that they know that they can trust people who use vouchers, having that kind of education and relationship building. So it does take effort and time, but I think that's not something that we can support.
Thank you. I don't want us to lose the thread on LD 2138, especially since tomorrow is when testimony is being heard.
Excuse me, instead of just an LD number, can you say what the bill is? I had to look up 1975, because we don't know anything about numbers.
I could lean over and ask.
Okay.
Okay.
So 2138 is the bill for the emergency shelters,
And the
correct?
title is Resolved to Improve Funding for Homeless Shelters. Representative Perry, that's Representative Madigan's bill.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
So I come back to that because the council as a whole has recognized the importance of the Hope House and the service that it provides our community. It was one of the largest awardees of the ARPA funds from last year. And we have been concerned about the prospect that the Hope House may be closed or going away. And so to the extent that our council can use its collective voice to support LD 2138, which is for the homeless shelters, I would like to see around the table, is there anyone who would oppose us providing written testimony for that tomorrow?
Can we do that in the positive?
Yes, let's do that. Can I see thumbs up who would support us providing written testimony in support of LD 2138? Thank you very much. Courtney, can we talk about that after? Thank you very much. That's great. Representative Perry, we haven't heard from you yet. Are there any bills before the legislature that are of particular importance to you that you'd like us to discuss today?
Well, I chair the tax committee, which does not often have legislation that directly impacts municipalities. Usually the things we work on go directly to the people and leave the municipalities out. Most of the things, I think Senator Baldacci nailed it with what we've been able to do the last 4 or 5 years with revenue sharing and general assistance and such. What I think perhaps my top priority this year is supporting the Hope House. I toured it back in the spring. I asked the director, how much of your, how big, what percentage of this operation, your operation is Hope House? She told me 4%. So how much of your time is it taking? She told me 50%, and that's not sustainable. That's a tremendous commitment of their time and resources they've put in that to serve the people of Bangor. It's time that the state steps up and be supportive with the funding to make sure it continues in the expansion. And I toured the Hope House 25 years ago, and it was just this one big room with cots everywhere, and I was really amazed and impressed with the job they're doing. And so I certainly want to be supportive of a bright future.
Councilor Fournier?
So I guess what bothers me is that we're being notified at 6 o'clock that it's happening tomorrow at 1 o'clock. There needs to be better communication.
Well, there was
These things
2
get-
weeks advertising.
Yes.
They don't get scheduled that far in advance.
We have to schedule 2 weeks out and there's public notice provided 2 weeks before the hearing.
But they don't give us, especially in the shorter session, a lot of stuff is being scheduled in very relatively short notice, but your point is well taken.
There's also a link I can send folks where you can sign up for notifications of bills that you're interested in, and you will get an email and they will tell you when the public hearing happens and when the work session happens, but you'll also get a lot of emails like.
Yeah.
I just have a quick question, in terms of the Maine Municipal Association, because I know that they lobby on behalf of Bangor and other municipalities. Is housing one of the priorities they're looking at? Are they serving you well and informing you of when these hearings are coming up and these work sessions are coming up? Because it's my understanding that they should be.
I would just note to, Council Fournier and others that you can just go online and you can register to do Zoom, you don't even have to try. In the old days, people had to go to Augusta, so you can just stay in the comfort of your home and provide testimony. You just have to sign up and they'll give you a Zoom. Yeah.
Years ago.
What's that?
3 years ago.
3 years in the old days? Yeah.
So, well, to answer your question, we are somewhat involved with the Maine Municipal Association. We'll be more involved with them in March when a number of us are headed to the National League of Cities Congressional Conference. We'll have Hill Day where we get to meet with our delegation, and part of that will be meeting with the MMA to talk about which issues we want to bring forward. I do also get the MMA newsletter, but I would say in terms of, council to MMA communication, I personally have not seen a lot in the last year. Thank you.
Can I just interject quickly, just so you know how they get their priorities? They have a 70-member legislative policy committee. There's 2 members from every Senate district. So is it 70 or 72? And how many Senate districts are there?
35.
So, yeah, so 70. And so there's a number of issues they'll take positions on that really don't impact Bangor.
Yeah.
That might even be contrary to how we would want them to represent us. So
Housing
it's tough.
pretty universal, given the study that.
Right,
we're seeing.
exactly, yeah.
So.
And I would think they would be supportive of the shelter one as well, but I'm not sure that they don't always take positions on all of it.
Right.
We're trying to
You say
jump
you're
in.
going to DC?
Yes,
Excellent.
yeah,
Excellent. How many members are going?
3, myself, Councillor Trimble and Councillor Fish.
That's great. I'm glad.
It'd be great.
It's a great thing to do.
We don't get anymore.
Okay. I went twice. It's a great experience. You'll enjoy it.
It's great. I was able to go last year and, it was fantastic. It really helped me understand how things get put together, at the national level. Senator Lyford, Representative O'Connell, anything that you want to bring forward, that you're working on from Brewer's perspective that will impact the greater Bangor region?
I don't want to finish next, so you can go first.
Yeah, I mean, I sat on the Environmental Natural Resource Committee. Municipal solid waste is a big issue for Brewer and Bangor. With the passage of not bringing out of state waste in here, Juniper Ridge was, unable to take sludge because it was so unstable. We were only days, 1 or 2 days, from legally dumping that in the river. And you know how many years we've been trying to clean the river up. So that's an important issue. I also understand that in 2 years that Juniper Ridge may be full. So we've got to find another place to go to. It has been suggested that the J Mill would close down, does have a landfill that's all licensed, so we may, move over in that area, but municipal sludge is important. As important as PFAS has become, you and I have talked about a local air company that may leave Bangor.
Right.
If it isn't straightened out pretty fast. And
Right, the PFAS issue.
we've got to get a handle on that.
Yeah,
Right away.
I think I'm more immediately concerned about the sludge issue, because on the PFAS, we passed legislation delaying the regulations for 2 years.
Yeah.
And I'm working with Chris Kilgore to make further amendments.
Good.
I put a piece in the paper with him a couple of weeks ago, but yeah, I think that we gotta figure out as a community, because landfills shouldn't be the answer. Okay, and so where are we with the Hamden plant? Is that dead? Is it
No.
doornail? No? Okay, I mean, it just seems to be, and then what about the Perk plant in Orrington? Is that gonna be able to take anything?
I was gonna say, if I can,
Yeah.
we might get it from Eric a little bit more of an update that he might have, but our most recent update was that they are taking trash from certain municipalities as a test run. They were doing 5, I believe they've upped it to more in the last little bit. So our finance director chairs the MRC. So we get regular updates on what is happening with.
Could you share those with us? Cause I've been in the dark as to what's going on.
I
with that
actually
whole thing.
subscribe to their website.
Oh,
They
okay.
send me updates,
Yeah.
but we ask for them regularly, so
Okay.
she gives us more of an update through that because we've been, like, that's one of the things in the past few years we've been keeping more track of, but
Yeah.
if you go to the MRC website and just put in your email,
So
they'll
do you think that's gonna be an alternative for us? I mean, is it gonna grow the capacity?
they have the ability to really turn that into what it should have been, and the
Okay.
MRC is focused on making sure that that goes back into taking all of the trash from all of the locations, working it into being able to use the sludge that comes off the trash into turning it into natural gas, and to be able to use, and they did get the permits, being able to turn the solid waste that's left over into pellets to be able to be sold.
Mhm.
So that was some of the holdup before, is that the permitting wasn't in place, and all of that is in place now. I don't think
No, I think.
Okay.
What you said is.
that was like a few weeks ago was the
Okay,
last update to us, but
I hadn't heard, I don't know what Senator Lightford's heard. Have you heard about this, Pete? Senator Lightford?
You know, my opinion, you're throwing good money after bad money.
Okay,
This won't happen.
okay, so you're very, yeah.
You know, the people who started that made the money and left town. I'm not supportive of MRC. I just don't think it's gonna happen.
Okay. And so on the PFAS issue, I would say that Senator Lightford and I have worked together in terms of the delaying thing, but we need to make changes so that companies can actually report. The state doesn't have all the scientific ability for companies right now. And so I think the law is good in terms of the goals. But in my opinion, we're gonna have to provide more help and a longer timeframe to allow businesses to be able to report in a reasonable fashion, because I'm concerned. Chris Kilgore has talked to me many times about, and that was a business that this council had helped create and finance, and Mayor Hawes remembers that we as a council helped get them off the ground, literally. And they now have over 200 jobs. So this is not something I take it pretty seriously when they express concerns and they legitimately couldn't comply. And I think only recently have people at the DEP they realize now they don't have the technology. So it's gonna be a period of time. We're gonna have to work it out. But, because I think, and I appreciate your role on ENR as well. No, and I appreciate your being a filter on the sludge issue. Keeping me apprised.
You know, there's worse things in the ground than PFAS.
I understand.
You know.
Let's not have that debate right now. Okay.
The environmental protection didn't take care of us very good.
Okay.
You know the motel that Chris remodeled down 1A, East Holden,
Yeah.
those cabins? It's my understanding they are no longer filled with just his employees. He is renting them out,
Oh, okay.
which is not a big deal. Just food for thought.
But if there's any feedback we can get from you folks on the PFAS issue as well as on the, because I would love to see, you know, and I share some of Pete's skepticism, Senator Lightford's skepticism, but if that Hampton plant works, great. I mean, we need something so we're not relying on we're gonna move away from the landfills. Yeah.
and the market in recyclables that they were selling previously or getting rid of previously has rebounded.
Yeah.
So that's, I mean, at least it's a positive.
Yeah.
You know, it's better than nothing at this point.
Oh, yeah.
And the biggest thing that we get, and I mean, I can speak for all of us, is we're always asking when recycling is coming back, because that's the most important thing. My neighbor still separates her stuff. He doesn't care that it doesn't.
Yeah.
This is the place,
Right.
and she's gonna separate it. So that's the big thing, is to be able to bring it back in at a cost that's not gonna send everybody.
Is anybody else hearing good things about PERC? Other than what I'm seeing in the paper, look semi-positive. what I'm seeing about Perk starting up again?
I have not heard.
They have a buyer,
They do, they,
they back out.
yeah, well, they had one that backed out, right? And then they got a second one.
Right.
That's all I know.
And I thought they were taking some trash and they were working on remodeling, from my understanding, from reading the paper.
So I'd like to come back around to housing if we can. We have a number of LDs listed here that the city and the city council sort of have our eye on, and wondered if you had more information or thoughts on any of those. So the first one, LD 1074, is a bond for new affordable housing for low-income housing. And we've got, so they're probably on page 3 for you.
I've got to look them up.
And I can check the status of all of them, so.
Wonderful.
Was that a
That'll be fine.
Lookner, was that Lookner?
Yeah, that's what I'm.
174, it's carried over in committee, not yet voted. We are scheduled to have all carryover bills voted out of committee by the end of January. No pressure.
Okay.
I don't think it's gonna, I think it's gonna be extended a little bit longer. Yeah.
It's a Daughtry bill.
Daughtry? Yeah, thank you.
And then there's LR 2752, is create workforce housing to promote economic development.
Search forest.
Thank you.
I don't believe it's out of the revisor's office yet. I wasn't sure because I didn't know who the sponsor was, so I couldn't look it up and see if they. Okay.
In which case it would probably not make it through. It wouldn't come the bill that we'd see.
Okay, yeah. Are all your bills out?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
The rest of the council, you have been uncharacteristically quiet. Thoughts or questions? What would you like to add? Counselor Schaefer.
I would just add, I recognize that you can look up bills and the advertise and all that, but if there's something that you really want to make sure that our voice is at the table, please just send us an email, counselors@bangormaine.gov, to say, because I mean, I know that when I look at the bills, even this list, I'm like overwhelmed with just this edited list. And it can be sometimes overwhelming to know what really needs our voice on it when it feels like everything needs our voice on it. So if there's something that we can really make an impact, I would agree that it'd be nice just to get a little heads up outside of the mailing lists and the website and all that, but like, hey, guys, this is a big one.
Well, the big one, I would say, right off the bat, is the general assistance. And that's a debate that's gonna happen real soon. And there's a number of bills that are pending, so that would be one of the big ones, because we really need to increase the reimbursement rate. So that would be a big one, that will be coming up in terms of committee votes, and then what we're gonna do with it in terms of this session.
And secondly, and also I would say, you know, because of the very lawyerly titles of bills, so it's good just to say, hey, this one's about Hope House. If it's like the emergency shelters of the, like, okay, like we have no emergency shelters, but like this one could seriously impact Hope House. Like, I mean, I would appreciate like a heads up on that, or for the council.
Counselor Trumbull, you were trying to break in?
Yeah, it's not that specific. I just want, because we deal with some things all the time. We assume everybody else knows how people are being affected in their lives. But Senator Baldacci early on mentioned the revenue sharing and aid to education and the additional revenue we got, and it's very much appreciated. But when people in Bangor, there's no solution. I just want to share with you what's going on when people get the tax bill.
Yes.
In Bangor, obviously, the last 5 or 6 years, property values have skyrocketed on the residential side. Our commercial property in Bangor has remained, valuation have remained fairly stagnant. They've been increased slightly. So most people, even though we reduced our mill rate significantly in Bangor, most people saw a huge increase when they got the tax bill. And especially the seniors, that bill that caps senior taxes, as you guys know, is gone away. So people they got that cap. Now we're gonna see not only the cap going away, but they're gonna see an increase in the taxes. So hopefully they'll be able to take advantage. We've sent an additional letter out to those people explaining other programs that they might take advantage of. So hopefully they don't get hit as hard as they could have. And I know this looks like there's some legislation in to try to mitigate that. I mean, it's just, there's gonna be a lot of seniors that are really gonna take a huge hit on the taxes this year.
Representative?
Yeah, I just wanted to speak to Counselor Schaefer and also Counselor Fournier's kind of comments about public hearings and all of this stuff, just to encourage you all and then folks at home to kind of understand the legislative process. Just even if you miss a public hearing, it's not the end of the world. It's okay. It really is. Like, if you hear about it the night before, it's really all right. You can either attend through Zoom, you can submit something via email, you can reach out to the people who you know on appropriations. There's many steps along the process where your voice could be heard and it can be really impactful. So the public hearing isn't the make or break of it. Just so you all know how I came to that bill being one of the most important, is that I reached out to Executive Director Dwyer when I found out, like in the past couple of weeks, like about how bad the situation was getting and like the clock was ticking. And, I'm hoping that the council is also working with Executive Director Dwyer to try to come up with some funding sources, because it's not going to be one bill that is going to save the day on that. It's going to be little bits of money from all over that hopefully they can stitch together in a last ditch effort to try to get some funding, and that funding has to be ongoing. And it's everywhere we seem to be turning to ask for money. It's a different organization kind of pointing the finger. Well, did you go over here? Did you ask this person? Did you ask that person? So I do apologize that I didn't come to you all and let you know about the public hearing, but I was also sent by numerous organizations running around in circles, being told, well, go over here, go over there, go over there. And sometimes it becomes a little demoralizing. I feel like we're all like really beat down by the weight of the world right now. So there's many opportunities for like your voices to be heard. And Baldacci mentioned it, Senator Baldacci mentioned it, the governor's office. One thing I'm hearing in appropriation is we don't want to spend ongoing funds. Like there's money with the Attorney General's office that we can hopefully piece together. So there's not gonna, I wish there was a magic bullet. There's gonna be a lot of little bullets that we're all gonna have to try to like take aim and attack this issue with. So, I will try to do better going forward on what all of those things are, but, just like, thank you. I just had to go on that rant.
Counselor Yakubaga, and then Representative Perry, and then, yes.
So as you're talking about, there is reluctance at the state level, the governor's office, like specifically to fund, to keep funding the Hope House. How do they expect this problem is gonna be solved? Like just on its own, what do they expect the population, the unhoused, is gonna go where?
I think
Where?
that they're hoping that the housing committee will come up with an emergency rental program. The original idea was that Maine State Housing would be involved, but Maine State Housing is not interested in being involved. So they're gonna have to come up with something, but it's a good question. It's a question I've asked. It's a question I think all of us here have asked. And I would just say that you folks need to express that directly to the governor's office, because that's where the major bottleneck would be on this issue. Okay.
Representative Perry, and then Representative Rader.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to follow up on some of the stuff Councilor Trumbull said about the senior tax deferral, worst piece of legislation I've ever seen in my life. Municipalities hated it. Municipalities did not want to deal with it. You were on the front line of registering people for this. So we did what was asked by municipalities and we repealed it. And we changed it into a direct benefit to seniors. So I don't want seniors to think we took this away without finding a way to help. It's what we found out when the state gave out these $850 direct payments. You had to file an income tax return to get it. Many people were not required to file an income tax return. So these people got into the system, and once they did, they found out, oh my gosh, I didn't have to file an income tax return, but I qualify for the housing fairness credit. So that's what, and so now there's a lot of new people in the system who will file every year because of these credits that they were missing out on. So we took this, now it used to be called the Circuit Breaker Program. And for people over 65, we expanded it. We expanded the income guidelines. We expanded the benefits. So what we found out is in a lot of communities, that deferral program took a long time to build the benefit. This gives up to $500 additional dollars every year from year one. So there was a lot, and you can also, seniors can defer their property taxes forever. You don't have to pay them at all. And the state will pay the municipality, keep the municipality whole. And there will be a lien against the house. They'll have to be settled at some point when they sell or pass away or what have you. But the only cost, the net cost, is interest at prime rate. I think it's 1% below prime. Taxes have to be paid anyhow, so they're not encumbering with a whole lot of interest costs. And thirdly, I was on the Joint Select Committee for Property Tax Relief back in 2004. That's when the state implemented the referendum that the Maine Municipal Association brought to us for 55% school funding. And there was tons of different pieces that went into it. And one of the pieces that was the most thought out, I really thought of, made the most sense at that time, was half funding the homestead exemption, because that allowed us to double the benefit, but it insulated us against, it did impact your mill rate upward some, but it insulated us. It's not the first time that homes have gone up faster than commercial property, and it helped insulate against the exaggerated effect on homeowners. But over the years, Maine Municipal have always fought the 50% school funding, and then they get the representatives wound up, and we're ramping it up. We're at maybe 75%. If we went back to 50%, we could do a much bigger homestead exemption, but there doesn't seem to be any political will in the legislature, because it gets no serious consideration from municipalities. So that if that's something people want to think about on the municipal level for a policy, we may have a starting point.
Spoken like the chair.
Representative Rader, you've been so patient.
Not typical of me, so. thank you for addressing that. I also wanted to say that written testimony is accepted at any point, and as long as you get it in before the work sessions are unpredictable. I keep trying to schedule 9 or 10 in my committee, and Senator Tipping keeps saying no. But that written testimony can be submitted at any time. It goes to every single member on the committee. You can show up for work sessions if the city has someone who has expertise in that area. They can attend the work session, and one of the representatives can call them up to provide information. So there are so many ways to participate. Also, I just want to highlight that there was a bill that we were voting on for local option sales tax in the 130th. And I had a question for a city councilor. I texted them and they're like, yes, we're all for it. Here are our talking points. And I was able to use that immediately. So I appreciated having that very direct communication. And also to the ongoing funding versus the one-time expense, I have to share what I'm hearing from the appropriations committee, because that is very much, they don't want to add anything more to the budget, any more line items, any more money to the ongoing funding. So they're picking out all of the things that we can fund with the surplus once. There is also, I don't know how to put this politely, but there is also a perception amongst certain members of the Appropriations Committee that Bangor has a lot of money and the Hope House has a lot of money, and we should be able to solve it on our own. I was very clear with this person who said that to me, that that was not the case, that the Hope House money was for expanding shelter beds, since we've seen a marked decrease in shelter beds over the years, and that's an effort to sort of correct that deficit. And hearing from certain other people who are possibly on the housing committee that we have leftover ARPA funding, we should just be using that. We know we have a lot of priorities. We know we have a lot of problems. We know that we have a lot of places that we want to direct that money. Perhaps having the council reach out to appropriations at this point might also be good, just to sort of nudge them in the right direction, because that was an unfortunate thing to hear, that someone believed the Hope House didn't deserve to have additional money because they already had a $5 million check. Took a lot of talking that day.
So I just.
No, go ahead.
So first of all, I'm really sorry, Councilor Trumbull, that your property values have gone up. I'm sure we're all upset about that.
Joe, I was just making sure we knew what people.
No,
It's nobody's
understand.
fault. I just.
No, I understand.
And Joe made a good point. That was we just need to educate people.
Right.
Those programs are on.
Yeah.
Well, no, that's what I was gonna say, is I do think we need to provide more information. The biggest obstacle for people on the senior tax credit, which is available to seniors making up to 80,000 a year. Okay, can qualify for this tax credit, is to let people know that we need to have.
But that's what I'm saying, we've sent a
Provide
letter
more
to those
information.
people, so they'll know,
Right.
yeah.
The property value changes are part of the market forces, and I think it's better that the property values are increasing than not increasing, but.
Well, you
for all
complained
of
about
us-
your tax bill an
Yeah.
awful lot this year.
Yeah, I know, and look, I didn't get any, my tax bill went up significantly, I'm not here to complain about it, I love
It
Bangor.
happened to all of us.
It happened to all of
Okay,
us, exactly, but I think that, we do need to educate people about the senior property tax, because there's a lot of misinformation. And even if we held a tax clinic
Yeah.
locally, I think seniors need to know how to apply for it and to get it.
Counselor Daniels?
Just something that we got this week, which I haven't really had a chance to talk about it, but when it comes to the senior bill that was in place before, I believe there's another bill following it up, but as of this point, out of 480 seniors that we covered in that, they're only gonna be up to like 60,000 covered, which leaves the city of Brewer at a $47,000 loss. That is not being covered because they changed the plan. So I don't have everything on it. It was an update we received this week. So unless a bill that's going through now is passed, I don't know what Bangor or how that worked or what you guys were left with, but it's definitely left us almost $50,000 in the hole for it being changed.
You're talking about the deferral that we repealed?
Yes,
That's one reason why we repealed it. This money was just going.
there was no money to like
There was,
take care of
but
it.
it's the one, in year one,
Yeah,
it was shocking to see where the money was going. It was going to southern coastal Maine to multi-million dollar property, the worst piece of legislation I've ever seen. And what I know is in year one, the actual expense is double what was in the budget. This thing was gonna grow out of control and swallow everything. The governor's state of the state is in 8 days. Her supplemental budget's coming out soon. I will anticipate there will be money to make everyone whole.
Representative Ronick?
Yes, I just wanted to make my plug before we move on to the next piece, because I also want to hear if there are things on this list that are current that are on your minds, if we haven't covered them yet. A couple of asks of support that kind of tie into all of the things that we've been talking about and all of the concerns that we have for people in our communities. I do just want to go back to LD 1710 and I'll have you like highlight that and we can talk more about that hopefully. So this is to support people that are 30% what do you call it, AMHI or below. So they're the folks that are suffering the most in our communities, and when those people don't have support in staying in their homes, they're the ones that stress the GA system, they're the ones that end up in our shelters. So I would love the council's support in pushing for that bill. So that we can help more people stay in their homes. And I also just wanted to highlight on here LD 1714. Which is a bill that I believe the council submitted testimony on last year to provide sustainable funding for our recovery community centers using cannabis tax revenue. Senator Perry ran a really incredible hearing on that bill. And right now it's on the appropriations table. So if there are folks that have the capacity to make the ask, it does tie into all of these issues that we're talking about, because when people have that support of a recovery community center, they're more likely to stay housed. It's definitely a huge public health issue. Did you have a question?
Yeah, I think we supported the question. I
Yeah,
had,
we did.
is that money moving from someplace to that? Where's it
It
going now?
would just be like a shift of
I know,
funds. Oh, yeah.
where's it funding?
Right now, and Senator, I'm sorry, Representative Perry, sorry, my chair, Perry, could, would have more information off the top of his head on this, I think, but right now, I believe some of that money is used to fund, education, around cannabis use, and I think that will continue there. because it's an allotment, so this would just be 12.5%.
Like I said, the
Not
cascade,
being used, yeah.
the canvas revenue is a money source targeted by everyone and everything. We had a number of bills looking for it, and it won't change the cascade or anything else. It ended up coming out straight out of the general fund, so that'd be appropriated, but you did such a good job. It was such an inspiring public hearing that the need was glaring, and anyone who saw it would walk away wanting to fund this, but it's up against everything else that we have to do, and money's limited, so we'll see.
Counselor Yakubaga?
So I have a question about expanding the general assistance program. Is there any, like any effort to address the process of implementation? Because we heard like many stories about how some municipalities are not administering the program. So how can we ensure that these municipalities are administering the GA? They like, and I don't know where exactly, but that's the stories, many stories.
No, and I've related those stories, and they were met with skepticism by the bureaucrats. And let me tell you that those stories are factual and they exist. And Rindy Fogler spoke on Zoom and substantiated them. So it's a concern that isn't taken seriously enough, but I'm hopeful that having a uniform application and an online accessibility to people, hopefully that will help reduce the dependency on which communities. There's supposed to be training and standards for GA, but you know, to be honest with you, I'm really not confident about how DHS will fall through with that. Okay, the most important thing, I've really come to the conclusion, the most important thing that I can do in general assistance is to work to raise the reimbursement rate to 90%, so that most of the costs are covered here. But I agree with you, I would prefer a different kind of system, but working, you know, there's a lot I'd like to say, but basically, I'm not confident in them following through on that concern, but it's been raised repeatedly, been raised in public testimony and in regular conversations. And all I can say is the bill would establish some standards for all GA municipalities. But
We have a few comments in the queue. Representative Perry?
Thank you. I just want to say, that's one of the most interesting things I've heard in a long time, that every community is mandated to provide general assistance.
Yeah.
And if you have a general assistance availability from noon to 1 on Wednesdays, okay, in your town, which a lot of them do, things like that, you're not administering it. And Bangor has a professional operation that's open 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, and people need to be here for the services. I mean, we issue fire permits now online statewide. You can go on, if we have an online presence, that standard form where people in their community can go online and fill it out and it stays in that community. I think that could be one of the best things to happen to the city of Bangor that I've heard of in a very long time.
No, I totally agree. And I think people need to understand that people come to Bangor because they're basically shut out. There was a Bangor Daily News story that I did share. The Bangor Daily News put a story in last year about what community's plan was for homelessness. And there were 2 or 3 towns who explicitly said, our plan for homelessness is to send them to Bangor. Okay, so that's not a plan for us that works. It works if people are helped in their own communities.
That's right.
But I would, Representative Rader was kind enough to look up the work session, and it's the 30th.
The 30th, which is a Tuesday, and that evening is the governor's state of the state.
Right.
I would encourage folks that want to be present to hear, to sign on to Zoom for that work session, or get to the committee beforehand with your written testimony, or if you know them, say hi, take them out to dinner and share your feelings.
Yeah, I would encourage everybody here individually even to submit something in writing. It doesn't have to just be the city of Bangor stationery. Okay?
So
Representative Rana? Sorry.
No, I'm done. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. When I was a provider, the thing that I heard the most was how people all across the state were struggling to understand how their GA system worked and to access any support from them. So I'm really excited about the idea of uniformity and standardization, something I've been fighting for a really long time. And I also just wanted to plug that when it comes to laws that we pass that impact DHHS, they all have to go through this rulemaking process, and I think that's really where we're gonna have to have people speak up and air their concerns. So that happens, what, like 6 months or a year,
Yeah, but
a
they
year
need,
out or so?
right, and they need to hear their concerns now
Yeah.
because we've brought this up directly with the commissioner and the people
Yeah.
below her. And, you know, they feel like I need to present a research paper with footnotes in order to prove this, you know?
Representative Speaker.
Oh, no, I was just gonna, I mean, what am I gonna say that Senator Baldacci, Representative Perry, and Representative Rana was gonna say? My idea was just public shaming, but I don't think that that's very productive, so.
It has a place.
I'm on board.
It for sure has a place.
But reimbursement rates,
Yeah.
that's much better.
Can I refer back to our interim
Yes,
city manager, Eric
absolutely.
Glidden?
Oh, hello.
Oh,
Sorry,
there.
no eyes in the back of my head tonight.
That's why I was.
Thank you.
Okay, no, my name's Eric Glidden. I'm the interim city manager from the city of Brewer. Just wanted to follow up on the online, application. So when we talk about online application, are we talking just an online PDF that's available for folks to fill out and download? Are we talking like an online portal for folks to use?
Let's
That-
dream
that would
big.
then
Obviously, it'd be better if
Anything,
it was a
right?
portal,
It's just-
but to be honest with you, it is still in the TBD determination.
I say that because having administered GA before, I mean, I know that the process is somewhat cumbersome for folks at times because they have to come into the city hall, town office,
Right,
get the application physically,
yeah.
bring it home, bring it back, and some folks don't necessarily have the ability, the means to transfer back and forth like that, and so.
Well, that's why it's important. I think if you can't speak, if you can't be at the hearing, I would recommend that you provide written testimony. Seriously, they need to hear your perspectives. And it helps us when people from our hometowns have written in and said, this is the concerns. It makes our job a little bit easier to say, you know, these need to be addressed because you folks have written. So I think those perspectives are very important, and I would encourage you to submit something in writing, because I agree with you, there's a difference between just a PDF versus an online portal that could handle it.
And the other piece too, and I noticed in one of the pieces of legislation for GA that there's a 5% reimbursement of some administrative costs. Is that correct? Could you kind of maybe talk about that a little bit, and what types of administrative costs are we talking about when it comes to the GA program?
Well, I think that goes to staff and person, you know, your local GA person and what it costs to run their office.
Before I move on from this topic, in the affirmative, for the Bangor City Council, if you're in support of us submitting testimony in support of LD 1732, expanding general assistance, can I get a thumbs up? Okay, Courtney, another one for the to-do list. All right. Very good.
I get some vacation.
Right.
Madam Chair, I just want to
Yes.
point out LD 445, which is the bill that I think some of you got Joe Pickering or others to lobby you on.
Yes.
That was passed by both houses. It sits on the Appropriations Committee. This is the bill that we submitted a while ago there's several states have gotten a waiver for Medicaid funding because currently there's a federal prohibition that if you have an inpatient psychiatric facility that has more than 16 beds, then you don't get federal funding. So the number of states have gotten waivers. The state of Maine got a waiver for substance abuse, did not apply for the mental health one. This bill would require it to apply for the mental health one because it would allow greater funding to come into Maine. States like Vermont have used the additional money for transitional housing and for outpatient services. Dorothea Dix is putting together there is funding in the last budget for outpatient services at Dorothea Dix. This would bring in an additional $5 million a year to the state for mental health services, which would be helpful. I've heard from St. Mary's that has a hospital psychiatric facility in Lewiston that they're interested in supporting this because they would also benefit. So it would also benefit the private providers, Acadia, and, the Spring Harbor in southern Maine. But I would ask if you guys could push that one. I mean, we have gotten it, was passed unanimously, it was passed on a bipartisan basis in our committee and unanimously pretty much in the House and Senate, but it needs to be funded. And this is another bill the administration needs to be pushed on.
It's okay, my question is, I'm confused, why does it need to be, what's gonna bring in money, what's the funding that it needs? It's gonna bring in 5 million.
It's gonna cost the state
Is there a match?
1.6 million.
Is it, what's that?
It's gonna cost, say, 1.6 million.
That's what we have to match, the
And we'll
5
bring
million,
in 4
not
million.
match it, but we have to put that money in.
Yeah,
Okay.
1.6 million, but considering that we're gonna get 4 million.
Right.
And there's also benefits that aren't calculated in that for the private mental health providers. Then, you know, which would be more than that. So, yes, that 1 point, it's not a huge cost but it would be helpful. The state will have to put together a waiver plan. And they'll have to show how the additional money is gonna be used for additional mental health services. We're not looking to put more beds in necessarily, but we are looking to put more money into treatment and outpatient and supportive housing, because there's a lot of, you know, when somebody is discharged from Dorothy Dix, a lot of times there is no housing. There is no adequate housing. There really needs to be, I'm hopeful that some of this money could be used like Vermont is using it for that transition, so they don't get recommitted type of thing. But that's a bill that we've worked on, and if you can put in a good word with the legislature, it'd be very helpful.
Counselor Fournier?
Giving it a thumbs up.
Okay.
Are there any members of the appropriations committee from this region, or are they all? Oh, sorry.
No.
Barbara Cardone was the last.
We
one.
used to have somebody,
Right,
usually we
yeah,
had somebody from this at least
Yeah,
from the region.
yeah, we don't this session.
Yeah.
They are from, Peggy Rotundo is the chair of the Senate, and
Melanie Sachs.
Melanie Sachs is from Freeport.
Yeah. Well,
Yes, Representative Schultz.
This is not a bill that's on your list, but it's a bill that keeps coming back in my committee, and it's something that has unanimous support and unanimous like frustration around, and it affects many of your constituents. Public employee retirement was gutted in like 2011. And we've been hearing from seniors that were promised a pension, promised Medicaid, Medicare payments, promised a lot from the state that the state hasn't delivered on. And we've been like inching the bar forward little by little, but it would have cost something like 700 million to make everybody whole. That's how much we've taken away from people. One of the representatives from the Labor and Housing Committee, Representative Charles Gold, has a very innovative idea. We're talking with the governor on Thursday. Please wish us luck, send up prayers, whatever you can. But that's gonna affect a lot of people in Bangor. Because it's teachers, because it's everybody who had their pension gutted. We were hearing from people that didn't have enough money to keep the heat on or get their medicine, and they thought they would. Yeah, that's it. And everybody on my committee, Republicans, Democrats, like universally, we are behind it. We're working on it. We're yelling about it. We're screaming about it. But with a $700 million price tag, it's very difficult to move on.
Thank you. Counselor Fournier?
Can we go back to Senator Baldacci's? I was giving my thumbs up.
Yeah.
Where everyone else was.
Yes, we get thumbs up? Or not? Yes? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Representative Rader. And since you mentioned Peggy Rotundo, would you and or Counselor Leonard like to talk about rail?
I can start if you want, Joe.
Go right ahead.
And so, I did invite a constituent from Portland, Tony Donovan. He's been sort of, the civilian that's been spearheading this initiative to reintroduce a station site up here in Bangor. If there are, some related questions about the resolution that we're gonna be talking about, that anyone has any questions regarding to, Tony can more than happily, answer those questions, or myself, or, Senator Baldacci. Effectively, just to sum up really quickly, because I know we don't have a lot of time, is, there hasn't been anything that has changed since the last time we've discussed this at council. There are a few things that have changed, and Tony can talk about them if you have any questions, but for Bangor's purposes, this is really just a resolution for us to coordinate with other municipalities to show the transportation committee that municipalities are watching this LD. We're taking it seriously. This is something that is going to impact a lot of individuals, especially considering the climate change restrictions we're going to have regarding transportation in general. Did you have anything that you want to add, Joe?
This is different than what we originally proposed. Because both Lewiston and Bangor had competing proposals. So Senator Rotundo and I, who are both, and when you talk to her, she's very animated on this issue. Because she's been working on it, she said, for 20 years, okay? She's very animated. We basically are joining forces. And the proposal is to basically Bangor, Waterville, Lewiston, Portland, because there's a big debate. There's a lot of trail people that want to maintain, and that's a separate discussion. But we're trying to avoid that discussion and try to get something done where Bangor and Lewiston are working together to bring rail. So that's what's different, is that this is one bill now instead of two competing bills. We face a very uphill fight because we have a DOT that is dead set against. They'll expand it to Rockland for whatever reason, but they still are excluding the 2 or 3 largest places in Maine outside of Portland. So it's gonna be, she's been fighting this fight for 20 years because she was hoping it would happen back in the 2000s, but it went to Brunswick, and now they're going to Rockland. So Lewiston has been denied for a while. But this rail thing, I've said this 100 times, came to Maine because of Olympia Snow and John Baldacci being on the transportation committees, okay, in 2000. And their intent was never just to leave it in Portland, okay? Olympia Snow is from Auburn, John is from Bangor. The intent was that eventually it would reach the rest of the state. But for 20 years, it's been stuck in Portland, basically. So, and it's gonna probably take a while longer, but we gotta keep pushing. I think that we have, fortunately, Representative O'Connell's on the Transportation Committee. I'm expecting him to deliver the Transportation Committee.
No pressure.
No pressure.
Counselor Trumbull, I saw you had your hand raised.
Yes, I don't have any questions. I was gonna suggest that we support the resolution. I'm good with it.
I know it's something we've discussed quite a bit. Is there additional discussion that's
I'm on
needed?
board.
Then all aboard.
I was gonna say, does anybody else remember being like my age, being able to hop on the train in Brownville Junction and go to Montreal for the weekend?
Yeah.
Best thing ever. I know you
We have like 8 minutes.
get out of the state.
You kind of started.
I'm just gonna
I have
acknowledge him.
stories.
If you want.
To do that.
Go ahead.
Okay, Tony, do you want to leave us with any words of wisdom before we conclude?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
You can.
Hey, first of all, thank you for inviting me to join. I was fascinated by the whole discussion. All of a sudden you called my name, I had to look up. My name's Tony Donovan. I'm a Portland resident. I too have been involved in rail probably closer to 30 years, and I'm going to suggest Peggy has been too, maybe more. We're trying to get rail in all directions throughout the state of Maine. Joe mentioned the state of Maine on rails, but this particular program, I have a grant in my hand. I'm going to come back to it in a minute. It's a federally funded program, no state money except for writing the grant, that identifies corridors for prioritizing passenger rail. This isn't a bill like all the past bills. It's going to bring the rail to Bangor. It's not a $300 million project. It's a federally funded, available $500,000 that will identify the corridor, Portland, Auburn, Lewiston, Waterville, Bangor, and East, but at least as far as Bangor, as a priority corridor. Now, I hold this up because this is a grant that the state wrote last year. I'll get you all copies of it. All you got to do is change the language from Rockland to Bangor, and you should be able to get a $500,000 study that goes beyond some of the previous criteria. Yeah, I shouldn't say that. The previous criteria, it doesn't apply to this grant. This grant looks for the corridor. It identifies the corridor. It identifies the station site communities in the corridor, and then you decide, can you run trains on this corridor to Bangor? I can answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Tony. I'll leave
Thank
it to you.
Are there questions for Mr. Donovan? Yes.
It's that money that we'll be receiving that's not funded by the state, but through a grant. What funds it when it needs to be maintained and kept running?
So that's gonna be a separate thing that we're gonna discuss. This is just to identify the corridor and the station sites. Like this isn't going to touch on those subject matters yet. We just have to start somewhere.
Yeah, we have to identify, there's a process of formally identifying a corridor in order for it to qualify for money in the infrastructure bill. So this is really to do preliminary work so that it qualifies for it. But yes, we are ways away, but.
What is the window on that?
What's that?
What is the window on that money from the feds?
It's still available. Aunt just got $1 million.
It's a good question, but I believe that the next round is due this spring of 2024. The last one was March 23rd, March 24th, 2023. I believe the window for this round, it's called bipartisan infrastructure law funding. And I think the next round is sometime this spring. So there's time to get the grant proposal in.
Thank you. Okay, we are just about out of time. Everyone's sad. It's 7 o'clock. Everyone's exhausted. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for such robust conversation. I think we've walked away with some things that we need to do. Please do keep us posted on how we can support you as you're working for all of our neighbors here in Bangor and Brewer. Give us a shout. Yes.
One quick second. I want to publicly thank Councillor Dean because she joined us at Together Place for our Thanksgiving meal. She had wonderful conversations with our members and with some of our guests. And we've had some conversations, ongoing conversations about the Together Place housing, ARPA grant, and I didn't get a chance to thank her in public and I wanted to do so. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do you have something to add?
Well, I was gonna publicly thank Council Chair Pelletier and say that this was really great. I was in a bad mood before I came in. Actually, I feel a lot better now meeting all of you. But many years ago when I was on council, we had one of these. I have to say that you've done an excellent job facilitating this.
Thank you.
And I'm leaving here like hopeful and wanting to continue this work with you all. So I just wanted to thank you all for inviting us here.
Yeah, I think we all thank the city council.
No, but I thanked her first.
Yes.
Noted.
No, I just want to thank the city councils of Bangor and Brewer. You guys have been working very hard. And I know there's a lot of stuff that you've been working on it's coming to fruition. And so I think there's a lot of good things that you guys are doing to help us. And so I look forward to continue to work with you.
Wonderful. We are cheering you on collectively.
Chairwoman Pelletier, thank you so much for reaching out and extending an invite to us in Brewer. We are missing one counselor who was headed on vacation and she was sorry to not be here, but thank you so much for inviting us, and it's great to have collaboration in the community. And
It's your turn.
I have a nice point for Representative O'Connell.
Oh,
And, we give these
Came
challenge
from
points in
Brewer City.
Brewer, but this is a state
Thank
point. But I
you.
would say that, it's just a challenge for all of us. Yeah, you gave me the state one. It's perfect.
I love it. Thank you.
Oh, yes. Okay, here we go. Thank
Always
you.
have them.
Miss Daniels always carries them in. So, just really looking forward to future collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Why don't we have these? These are cool.
You guys don't, yeah.
I was gonna say,
I don't want ones the same.
I was gonna say, I carry them around just in case.
How many of you have these pens?
I do, yeah.
Okay, who doesn't have them?
We don't.
There you go.
And can we, before everybody leaves,
What does
if
it
we
say?
could
Yeah, what's it say?
impose on all
You
the.
just-
Hopeful things will happen.
One more thing, while we're giving out goodie bags, before everybody leaves, if we can impose on you, we'd love to take a joint photo to post on the council Facebook page and share it to let
joy.
all of our neighbors know.
And this is why we don't bring Kevin.
Oh, I
places. He's not allowed to like wait in there.
Maybe first on the floor.
Up against the wall. Yeah, don't make me get my gavel. No. All right.
No, it's yours.
What's the meeting?
Yeah.
How about here? I'm moving.
You were there in Augusta. Yeah. I don't think one of the two was.
I'm okay. Counselor Fournier. Okay, he's on our. So he's not. Trying to see that this. Tell us where to go, where we go. Sorry.
Alright, you. Yeah.
Alright, we're going this way. Everybody in.
Yeah. All right. I like that.
This one right here. I didn't use it.
I feel it. I feel it.
We need, hold on, we need Senator Lightford. Senator Lightford needs to go.
No, he's fine. He's fine. He doesn't want evidence.
You're very job on that. You have to wear that braid for you. I can't really say that.
We have some of them. Yeah.
Doing well.
I know you guys will. Yes. There's a new thing you guys.
I know the state. I know they are.
Yeah, I know. Picking a flower. Nicely. Yes.
All right. All right, Bangor City Council, we have one more item on our agenda that we need to attend to before our regular meeting. Thank you all.
Thank
you.
Yes.
Everything's like. Or no?
No, this one's open real quick, and
Tom.
I've only this was It's that last item on this agenda, the legislative.
One moment, please. I'm attempting to get my act together. Oh, yes, LD 1530?
Yeah, so Robin Carr from Public Health is participating. I believe there's a public hearing tomorrow. And that's why she was hoping to chat this through to see whether or not there was interest from the council to support public health's testimony or not. Robin, are you? There she is.
Hi, I'm here. Thank you so much, Courtney and council. Some of you might have seen me before. I work with Patty Hamilton and Jamie Comstock at the Public Health Department, and I mostly do substance use prevention and intervention work. And so we've been quite involved in a lot of the cannabis policy making over time over the last 10 years. And LD 1952 has come up, and there is a hearing, I think, on Wednesday. And this is the on-site consumption bill, and wondering if council is interested in taking a position in opposition of this and wanted to just provide some public health information about that. It is kind of a, it's a huge concern for us because really the cannabis industry, the cannabis program in Maine should be set up to be as safe as possible for consumers and also for the public. And the infrastructure and the research just really isn't in place to have on-site consumption in these cannabis hospitality establishments. For one thing, we don't have the same sort of research base and standards for safety, and we're concerned about an increase in impaired driving from this particular measure, and we don't think that there's law enforcement infrastructure and support to be able to monitor or safeguard against a possible increase in impaired driving. And alcohol just isn't the same substance as cannabis in terms of how it works on the body. And especially with edibles, they can have a delayed effect. And the research right now says that if you inhale cannabis, the impact, the effect on your body can last in impaired driving for 6 to 8 hours, they think. And for edible products, it can be from 8 to 12 hours. And it's just not realistic to think that consumers are going to stay on site in a hospitality setting to be able to kind of work through that and drive afterwards. And obviously there could be an impact to our indoor smoking laws if we're talking about inhaling or aerosolized cannabis and rolling those back. And I know we've all worked really hard to protect our indoor environments from smoke exposure, and some of the same carcinogenic issues are present in cannabis products as they are tobacco products. So that's kind of a significant issue as well. And if I could, I also quickly wanted to flag for you LD 2147, and that's an act to remove the requirement for edible cannabis products to be stamped or embossed on each serving with a universal symbol. And John Hudak, the director of the Office of Cannabis Policy, reached out to the Public Health Department the other day to inquire about whether or not there would be the ability for us to oppose this measure. The Office of Cannabis Policy is itself. Obviously, we think this could cause a huge public health issue for adults consuming products unaware that they contain cannabis, or products getting into the hands of minors. So those were the two things we wanted to check in about.
Councilor Trumbull, thank you.
I would support that we oppose both those pieces of legislation.
Second.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I agree.
Want
Discussion?
a thumbs up? Yeah, be opposed?
I'm gonna doubt that just because my thought on this, I don't think there should be smoking, like I don't like the smoking laws, but I also feel like that there should be, we don't have rules against consuming alcohol in a bar, and alcohol has absolutely horrible impacts and effects, and so I would oppose that, and also the stamping of edibles or whatever it is, we don't, I mean, I don't know, I bet it just seems, it doesn't align with what I think our boundaries should be, and I feel like if alcohol can be consumed in a bar, in a public place where you're old enough to buy alcohol, then edibles or something like that is in the similar vein. So I would say that we don't take a stand on that. But I realize I may be in the minority, but.
I do also want to state that while I completely understand the trepidation regarding these legislations, I think it's also important to make sure that we come together with full facts to the table. As someone who does take cannabis on a regular basis for my PTSD and other issues because of my military service, the 8 to 12 hour factor of consuming edibles to last that long, that's just completely fictitious. So I don't really want us to take a stand on this either. I'd rather that we just let the legislature handle this out as is right now.
I will add, my concern is that we don't have a way to tell really if someone is impaired at this point, if they're driving. You know, if someone is driving drunk, there's a breathalyzer that can be taken. They can do a field sobriety test. We don't have the same measures in place for cannabis. And so my concern is that if we say it's okay for consumption in a place other than somebody's home or a place where they'll be for a while, and they do drive impaired, that we don't have a way of protecting the public from that. I do think it's important to make sure that if the product contains cannabis, that people are aware of that. I don't know if it's a stamp or a label or what it is, but that's where I am on that. No other comments?
Just one quick,
Yes,
is this a decision we need to make tonight? Because I feel like this was very rough.
I think tomorrow is the hearing, is that correct?
For one of them, I believe, right?
Wednesday.
I think they're both Wednesday.
So how does this work? Do we have to have the majority to say we oppose this, or how?
Yeah, it'd be whether or not there's a majority to support the action or not. We try to vote in the affirmative.
Okay.
And they're two separate, or is it combined?
They are two separate. They can be separate if you would like them to be.
Could we separate them just for? I think that would be beneficial.
Separate them?
Yeah.
Okay, so those in favor of supporting the rules against,
On-site consumption.
thank you, I was gonna say on-site consumption, we'll get a thumbs up.
Oh, what, can you, I'm confused.
Correct.
The bill would allow on-site consumption, so what we
In the
vote,
medical stores, yeah.
right, so we would
So
support the recommendation of staff, or we.
support staff recommendation to submit testimony against it.
Okay,
Does that make sense?
Offsite, right? We're talking about offsite.
On-site for in the medical store.
In the medical.
Consumption, yes, within the store,
Within the store.
yes.
This is actually for adult use cannabis.
Okay.
Yeah.
Medical.
Oh, and recreational as well? I thought it was limited to medical. No, okay, so any store, that sounds it.
Only in the store, you're saying?
It would, yeah, it would allow for consumption in the store.
So it was not allowed earlier, and with this one, they're gonna allow consumption.
Right. And the vote right now is whether or not to support public health opposing the bill.
We're opposing.
Yeah. So I count 4,
Yeah,
5.
yeah.
That's the majority.
Okay. And then the second vote is supporting legislation that would require items containing cannabis to be labeled or stamped?
I believe so. Is that correct, Robin? Yeah.
Correct. Thumbs up if you support that.
So labeled for.
So people know that there's cannabis in a product.
I'm not clear that it's just labeling the product. I don't think it's gonna be like you can sell a Hershey bar with a mysterious ingredient. I think I don't understand quite exactly what it is, but what I heard was that the actual product had to have some sort of stamp on it.
So I'm sorry, I probably did not explain that well, but this is the universal symbol has already been in place, and these are for adult use products. So this is a bill that would act to remove the universal symbol protocol that we have already established in place. So someone is suggesting.
Can I ask, is it on the product? Is it on the product or is it on the packaging?
Both. There's some that are on some edible products where it's directly on the per piece item, and some that are on the packaging if it doesn't meet the size requirements.
So this is to remove,
Yes. So someone's put a bill forth to remove the symbol.
but staff's recommendation is not.
Right.
It's to oppose it.
Not-
Yes.
Oppose removal.
You have
I'm in favor of staff.
I'm really confused on what I'm supporting, to be frank, like,
So, yeah, actually,
So you're removing the symbol that says there's cannabis on it.
They wanna remove it, but
Staff does not want to.
exactly, we're opposing, removing. it.
Councilor
Yeah,
Leonard?
it's just like alcohol, you
I-
see
but-
the alcohol content, and then
yeah, I know, but that doesn't sound accurate.
Can we give Councilor Leonard the floor, please?
So, clarifying question is there anything that's going to replace the symbol? Or is there going, like, so similar to what we have for, what do we have right now for alcohol that does the equivalent to what's happening with cannabis right now? And what does that do if we don't have the labeling there overall?
So I think on alcohol, on all the alcohol bottles and packaging, it states that it contains alcohol. And certainly when you purchase it, the ID requirements are in place. And so for cannabis, right now, there's a universal symbol. It's the same symbol actually that we got together with Massachusetts and adopted a unified symbol. And it just warns consumers that there is cannabis in the product that they're consuming. And so it's a protection for adult consumers to know what they're consuming, and then also to help keep those products out of, awareness to keep them out of children's hands.
I don't really see an issue maintaining the symbol, what we have right now. So I guess I'd be in favor of not removing the symbol, but I mean, like, well, why was this brought forward in the first place? Can you answer that question at all, Robin?
I'm not entirely sure, though. I do know who sponsored the legislation was a big part of the adult use cannabis campaign. Representative David Boyer is sponsoring this legislation. So I think over time we've seen sort of a general movement in the lessening of some of the restrictions and public health and safety measures that were put into place when the cannabis adult use law was enacted. And so I think this is kind of just more along the same. And like I said, the Office of Cannabis Policy Director reached out to the Public Health Department to request that we weigh in opposition of this, because they themselves are very concerned about this happening.
Okay.
And that's pretty irregular for them to reach out in that way.
Yeah, I'll support public health in their effort against this.
I would like to clarify that the
Sure.
text actually says an act to remove the requirement for edible cannabis products to be stamped or embossed on each serving with a universal symbol.
Okay, each serving, what
Which
does
is-
that mean then? I'm so sorry to interrupt, Councilor
that's-
Schaefer, but so, like, let's take edibles, for example. So like, there's a serving for a package of gummies. One serving might be 10 milligrams, but then there might be another package where each gummy is like 20 milligrams as opposed to 10 milligrams. So what is the standard consumption for an individual, I guess? Like, can you clarify that?
I can't clarify that, but I could certainly follow up and provide you that information tomorrow if that's helpful.
Okay.
It seems like perhaps we need to get a bit more information on this before we can take action.
And we can respond via email tomorrow after we receive the information. Okay.
You could individually.
Yeah.
Can we do it then?
I mean, individually,
I mean, I
well,
think,
at
what I would
city
suggest, if
solicitor.
people are comfortable, they don't
Yeah,
vote, but
yeah,
I think
we
there's a
don't-
majority that are in favor of moving
We
forward,
don't
opposing
reply.
it, so.
Yeah, we
I'm
don't
okay.
reply all.
There's already been a motion.
We can't, yeah.
No.
Uh,
If people are comfortable, don't vote for it.
Can we do a thumbs up, just
Sure.
In
So
opposition.
let's
Thumbs up
be,
to
opposes
support,
removing
to support
Mhm.
staff recommendation?
all right. So we're going to do a thumbs up to support staff recommendation.
I don't have enough information at this point.
That's
where I'm at.
still majority.
That's fine.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Robin. Just real quick, so I know we're almost out of time. Just one update I wanted to give really quick is that we are moving forward with a section of our rules and regs to update certain benefits to our employees to increase vacation. Right now, we only offer 2 weeks for the first 6 years, and that is grossly outdated. So we're looking to change that and update some language as well for sick that allows for increased flexibility for sick leave for family and parental use. So that we'd like to move forward with, and then we'll come back again with the full rules and regs. So that's what I had. That's urgent.
Are we executive session on that?
No, there is an executive session, that's that,
Oh,
but
there
now
is
I'm all done, so.
Okay.
I make a motion that we go into executive session, MRSA 4056A personnel matter.
Second.
Need a roll call vote? Counselor
Yes.
Fournier? Counselor Trumbull?
Yes.
Counselor
Yes.
Leonard? Counselor Yakubaka? Counselor Haas?
Yes.
Counselor Fish?
Yes.
Counselor Dean?
Yes.
Counselor Schaefer?
Yes.
I'm a yes as well.